Hello, both. Thank you so much for joining me today. And as part of our launch of Melka into the UK, I'm really delighted to get the chance to spend the next little while asking you some questions about business and the industry. First question is, as we bring Melka into the UK, can you introduce the UK trade and consumer to Melka? What would you like them to remember about your wines?
Well, your English is a little bit better than mine, so honey, please move forward.
Well, I think if we had to do a Reader's Digest, kind of sum it up in one sentence, it would be that we're a family-run, small producer, high-end, limited production, focusing on quality more than quantity, and terroir-driven wines.
Absolutely, and I think the important part is for the consumers to know is we've been around since 1996, so our first vintage was then. So we're not the new kids, on the block, I will say. We've been doing this for a long time, and I think, the company have grown very slowly. We wanted to keep it super small. It's only basically Sherry and I, and we have Sylvie as the director of the company as well, and basically an assistant winemaker to help us to make the wine on site. So that's how we wanted it since the beginning, and that's our company basically. 4, 5 people depending of the time of the year.
Yes. Okay, thank you. And outside of the home market, obviously we are delighted to be working with you in the UK. Where else are important markets for you? What's your most important market? And where aren't you that you would like to see your wines in the future?
Good question. So I would have to say we've been working with Japan insofar as export the longest. We've done maybe 3 different market visits there, which has been very wonderful experience because they truly are, focused on high end, and any kind of retail markets that we are in or restaurants have been just in love with our wine. So that's been very, very fabulous to hear that kind of feedback. Philippe usually works the Asian market by himself.
Okay.
That's not his domain. As we said, we're 3 of us in the company. So whether or not it's domestic travel or international, we kind of divide and conquer typically. There are a couple states that are large enough where Sylvia and I go together domestically. But anyway, I'm diverting from your question. You're the Asian market.
Yeah, I think, we feel like overall the growing market for us come from 2 sides in a way. Asia was a big part of it because basically, as you know, Napa Valley is competing with Bordeaux in general on a lot of markets. And the buzz really of Napa is growing around the world. So we've been, like Sherry mentioned, really have a strong influence in Japan for a long time. So we wanted to really kind of push a little bit of wings in Asia. So that was kind of the big part of it. And then I think on the other side is Europe becoming kind of, radar as well. I think there's becoming a more focus on small, high-end family winery like we are right now. They used to basically focusing only on the obvious brand of Napa Valley, the Opus One and the Mondavi, obviously. But I think you start to see a little bit more interest about those small producers who trying to show a little bit the diversity of terroir of Napa Valley. And so that's what is exciting for us too.
Yeah, and we're really hoping that the UK becomes one of those, long-term love markets that we'll be able to come and visit you guys and meet some of the folks that support the brand, etc. So
absolutely, as are we. And I think we're seeing such growth in independence in the UK that it is the perfect time. There really is that interest here as well for something away from the conglomerates and the larger businesses in specific channels. So yeah, it's a good time.
Yes.
And given the last couple of years have been interesting, what changes have you seen with the pandemic and the global marketplace changes. I mean, you know, us coming out of the EU will not have directly affected you, but there's been a lot of global market changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody had to pivot in many, many industries, not just ours. So clearly the digital media was a lifesaver for us. Trying to do some virtual tastings with people, and that, you know, obviously was a way to stay connected to family and friends as well when you're sitting, you know, isolated. So in addition to the pandemic, we ended up with a huge fire season here as well. So we had, you know, shelter in place and mandatory outdoor tastings, which you can't really do when your environment is completely filled with smoke. It's not not that great for visitors to be coming and tasting at the winery. So so it definitely was a challenge, and obviously every in distribution it pretty much shut down as well. So not only our direct to consumer sales were affected, but distribution, since, you know, restaurants were not buying any wines either. So you know, a difficult year, but you need to face those types of things to really appreciate what you have when the going is good and harvests are bountiful and sales are great and all that. So I think it really shows your resiliency as a brand when you you're faced with that kind of adversity and you do the best you can.
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously we've seen two things. It's like the good part was, if I have to stay a little positive, the collectors started to deplete their collection. Yes. So you saw a lot of higher drinking level, I would say, for those kind of people who are obviously a type of consumers in a way. And we've seen a lot of more internet kind of, you know, basically sales compared to the past. We see also people being more on a computer, trying to learn. The younger crowd also wanted to learn more about the wineries in Napa Valley. They finally had the time a little bit to sit down and really trying to learn about the places that basically are not, let's say, in the media normally. So we had a lot of more interest from a different type of crowd as well. So that was really beneficial for us. And then we saw really the last, that was the beauty of the US in a way. We went from nobody in Napa to a lot of people starting to really come, especially in the summer. And we realized how important it is for us to really have this hand sell, tell our stories to the consumer, and share basically a philosophy of life.
And you mentioned a smoke taint. Just to quickly follow up on that, have you had to manage that in terms of harvest winemaking? Have you had to start adapting to that?
Sadly, you know, the fires around in Northern California, I mean, they're Southern California, they're Oregon, they're kind of everywhere. I think it's just one of those phenomena we're going to have to deal with. But yeah, basically to go backwards, 2020 was a vintage where there were just back-to-back fires, and most of the fruit, at least for us, was rejected. So we're not going to have much 2020 to bottle next year. That's for sure. But you know, that's a part of what it is. You know, this year we had some fires that were to the north of us in Tahoe and a little bit further, but the smoke stayed relatively high in the atmosphere, so it wasn't anywhere near the vineyards, at least for the Napa Valley and Sonoma, which was great. We did some testing. We are always, you know, on high alert and doing what we need to ensure that we have, you know, the fruit that has integrity, that we're not going to be processing something that's got smoke taint.
Yeah, it's unfortunately the new normal, I would say, in California in general. But we starting to understand so much better the effect of fire and indirectly, obviously, of smoke by basically the proximity of the fire, by the elevation, if you wish, of the smoke, where located the smoke is, how long is staying. basically in contact with the grapes. There's a lot of different kind of level of smoke that we don't realize, and there obviously there's different level of effect differently the wines. On the high-end wines, we have a policy of, unfortunately, but fortunately for the consumer, about no compromise. So if we feel like we have any kind of small impact, we decide not to release the wine, but we're still in an experimental phase. And the beauty, I think, of the future, we start seeing that we can fight against it, which were really the last few years, we're feeling a little bit harmless or hopeless,
vulnerable.
And so finally, we see a little bit of light to really fight this issue.
Okay, thank you.
The science is out there, where we have ways that we can try to protect the vineyards and protect our homes, everything, so that we suffer less damage.
As you say, it is what you now will have as the new normal, and much like smudge pots and everything else that is used in other areas for different reasons, it'll become part of the routine, annual routine.
Correct. Yep.
So when you founded Melka, you mentioned, the importance of it being small and steady for growth, but what was your ambition and your expectation?
Well,
I mean, when we first started, we were both working for different companies, and when we wanted to break into the wine industry with our own brand, it's really difficult to do if you don't have deep pockets, right? I mean, we didn't have the means to be purchasing land and managing vineyards and all this kind of thing. So we got very creative on how we started our brand, which was initially doing kind of a barter for consulting winemaking services in exchange for fruit or finished wine. And that's kind of how we broke into it in 1996. So I think our ambition was always to grow organically, like Philippe had said earlier, and just growth in a way where we're able to manage and maintain the quality that we really are focused on from the beginning. So, and I think that's pretty evidenced by the fact that we weren't even able to have our own winery until 2017. So on our 20th vintage, we finally ended up with our own home for our wine. So,
yeah, I think, thank you. I wanted to basically say, we're like winemakers, owners, and with a terroir background, as you can imagine. First study in Napa Valley was to really try to understand the quality of the different sites and basically the microclimate, and trying to figure out if we could really make what we call those high-end wines, so those wines with a pedigree, or the wines we can age. And so initially our goals were really to focus on what we call vineyard designated wine, or wine from one location. The criticism of Napa Valley at the beginning was really people were blending different appellations, so different terroirs together to create their wines. And we wanted to go really on 180 degrees away from that and really show a site and tell the story of one place. That's how we started. And on the side note, we always also have a wine that's called CJ for two children. And this idea was more like to show that we can create affordable, great Cabernet from Napa Valley. So that was the only label, was a little bit different meanings than really the terroir-driven ones.
And given how long ago it was, your children must be quite grown up now.
Good. Yes. We don't, maths are not really good, but they are definitely, they're basically not with us on their own, living their lives.
Finally.
Yes. And are there any new projects that you're working on just now that you can share?
Well, we're always on the lookout for vineyards that really excite us. I mean, we already have 9 different wines, so we're not trying to kind of blow up there and do a bunch of different SKUs just for the sake of doing different SKUs. So there has to be some type of project that really excites us. So in the interest of diversifying things that are not just Napa and Sonoma, granted, we do have a vineyard down in Paso Robles that we make Syrah from, but we are exploring a little bit of Chardonnay from Santa Barbara right now. First year trial this year, so we'll see.
Exciting.
But we're always on the lookout for potentially new vineyards or new projects that are just going to be something in our wheelhouse that we've always wanted to make wine for.
Yes, like we were talking about earlier, we're really winemakers, owners. So as soon as these wines to excite our brain, we want to try to recreate it a little bit. And we obviously Cabernet centric because we are in Napa, but we not only make Cabernet. And we have, that's why we purchased a vineyard, in Knights Valley, which is a Sonoma County. Why? Because it was so uncharacteristic, I would say, so unusual for the location. Sorry about my poor English, but high in elevation, the concept of really high in elevation, which is about 2,500 feet. So maybe about 700, 800 meters kind of range. So we wanted to take advantage of those kind of location that we can find around it and create more like a Cabernet Franc Merlot driven wine, because obviously we have this kind of right bank flair in us. So that's that. And then we wanted to also show that Sauvignon Blanc becoming really a strong player in Napa. We've been working with kind of the Sauvignon Blanc nerd a little bit, if you wish. So we were working on trying to show the consumers that we can create some really exciting wines we can age with a Sauvignon Blanc grape. So that's been really a goal. And like Cherie said, we're trying to diversify with Paso Robles because there's limestone that we don't have, for example, in Napa Valley. So that's the story of the Paso Robles. We love Syrah, of course, because that's the best grape there, but the main focus was really the terroir there, or limestone that you can not find here, and the Chardonnay as well. And on a side note, I think with fire becoming also an issue, it's nice for any kind of business to diversify a little bit wings to make sure we can produce some wines from somewhere.
Yeah.
That's kind of the idea.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one of my beliefs is, Napa is clearly one of the most kind of exciting global wine regions, which in itself is quite an interesting phenomenon. And given both of your experience in consulting within that arena, why do you think it has happened? How do you think Napa has gotten to this point?
Well,
I think we've covered a little bit of that answer already in our discussions, but I think the consumers are getting a little bit more savvy over the years, and they've come to really realize that Napa Valley is a source of some amazing wines that are competing with Bordeaux wines, but on a much more price-friendly side of it. I mean, granted, we pay a pretty penny for fruit here, and winemaking is not cheap, but comparatively speaking, I think, people have realized that Napa is a value compared to other, regions in the world.
That's an interesting use of the word value. I like that.
Yeah. And exactly. It's true when you compare. Obviously, we cannot compete with the Burgundian wines being so expensive, but really a true competition, as we know, is Bordeaux. But I feel like to keep it simple, Napa Valley has been basically a little bit, the bad child of the Cabernet, not the bad child, but the child that you're not really focusing on. And suddenly people realizing, like Cherie mentioned earlier, oh my goodness, after so many competitions that we all know between Napa and Bordeaux, that's, kind of those little push basically now are becoming really relevant, and really people just realize that that Napa is not only about jammy and high alcohol. You know, there's something else to that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of wines who are actually, that's what the consumer wants, who are very different to each other. That was also another maybe small critic of Napa. All the wine tastes the same. And well, I can tell you that they are not, except maybe if you want to believe it, but otherwise they're definitely very different to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And are there any new entrants you've seen coming into the market in your consulting work that, you know, you'll be keeping an eye on over the next 5 years, or you said you recommend keeping an eye on for the next 5 years?
Like we're repeating a little bit of stuff, and you know, we hate giving names, but you see definitely a younger generation of winemakers as well, with a different kind of mind. We went from I would say from some extreme in the 90s and 2000 of winemaking to really learn the Napa Valley, and now you have really you see more and more basically smaller businesses. That's what can really grow. You have really the big ones who got bigger, but for me, the smaller businesses are the very important ones in Napa Valley, because they're really trying to truly show the diversity and focus on quality, basically, no matter what. And then you have the younger generations with smaller businesses as well. Well, we call the hipster of making wine. We're trying to change a little bit the concept of Napa. I'm not sure if it's going to be long term or short term, with much lower alcohol wines, with you know, a different kind of winemaking technique. So that could be something could stick or not. I'm not sure. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, or it's second generation as well. I mean, there's some long-term families here that have been making wine, and now it's the next generation that's taking over. And again, they may not necessarily be following the same philosophy that the first generation had employed for their winemaking. So it's kind of exciting to see a little bit of a shift. I mean, for me, that's what's really innovative about California winemaking versus the Europeans are just, they're tried and true, right? They Bordeaux, they're doing the recipe that works. They never really want to try anything that's a little bit different. And we're over here, we're willing to take risks. So I think, the new generation and next generation are taking risks and doing some different approaches to winemaking.
Thank you. And we've talked about the fires and certainly the impact of climate change. And I mean, for us in the UK, we're seeing a lot of interest in alternative packaging and lighter alcohol styles. And for yourselves, are you seeing a trend that particularly speaks to you that you will be keeping an eye on for the coming years?
First of all, I think we didn't mention that we are really, it's all about farming for us. I mean, the farming is really the key of consistency and the future. And we have, obviously, as you know, new challenges that we're really concerned about with drought and with the heat and basically the climatic change and in some regard with obviously the fires as well. So I think what we really trying to develop is be always proactive and be always kind of ahead of what the situation can give us, and using a lot of if we can science and data and all those things to really trying to perform better. But I lost my train of thought. Yeah, exactly, train of thought. So Sherry, why don't you keep going? And
I think, I mean, for us, the main focus is obviously in the farming and the fact that there is this climatic change, and we really need to address it starting in the vineyard. So even this year, we had a vineyard, our reservoir was empty, and we needed to give the vines a drink of water. So we ended up trucking water from our well here at the estate to the vineyard. So, you know, those are situations that nobody really likes to be faced with, but we need to address them head on. Otherwise, it's going to become even a bigger issue down the road. So that being said, I think, you know, addressing the global warming and making sure that there are farming techniques that we can use that will produce drought-resistant type of vineyards where there's minimal intervention, I would say, that we would need to do. And we are indeed, you know, trying to focus on a lighter alcohol style of wine. I don't know if that's a trend within the Napa Valley in a large, broad sense, but it's definitely a focus for us. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I would say, well, I mean, it's all about details. I mean, that's the important part the consumer wants to see. It's not like we are basically going to change the wine style or anything. It's all about working with detail on the high end. So those changes are very kind of, you know, minor, and hopefully they will have obviously a strong impact on the product. But if we are, like Sherry said, focused on slightly lower alcohol, it's not like we're going to go from 14 to 12%.
No.
That's what I wanted to make sure we understand. But I feel like there's definitely, you know, like I was saying earlier, we went to the extreme in California with basically a trend of very opulent wine. That was kind of really the focus, and we were really focusing on what we call the richness of the fruit and showing the climate more than really showing the soil and the terroir sometimes. So we were losing a little bit this kind of influence. And so now we're trying to going back to really show a little bit more like the soil and minimize a little bit this kind of feel of heat, basically. And so the wines are a little bit more refined and elegant. And for Melka, for the two of us, we call us in a way the right bank of Napa Valley. Because, well, first of all, we had a strong right bank, you know, influence, you know, winemaking. But we wanted to bring a little bit more the integrated tannins and this kind of really a beautiful fruit profile and the purity of the fruit that we can get also up here. That was really the key of, I think, of the success until now and probably going forward.
Thank you. So that's probably the end of the serious questions until the last one. But okay, what is the one wine you have tasted that you wish you had made?
One.
I know, it's hard.
It's
difficult. A hard question.
Pick one.
Yes, I mean, you know, I have to pick two.
Okay.
No, I think there's many, as we all know. I think, you know, we always go back as winemakers to the older wines that sometimes, not extremely old, but let's say, you know, for me it was Palmer 1970. I had it in lunch about a year ago, and I thought, I couldn't understand why the wine was so beautiful to drink at a lunch, which is usually, you know, sometimes not the best one that you remember at lunch. But 1970 Palmer was unbelievable. And we always been a great fan of the Grave as well in Bordeaux, because they are really show the blending kind of expertise, I would say, of some of those people there with Cabernet Sauvignon, Cab Franc, and Merlot. So Aubryon always been kind of my cup of tea. 86 because it's more like a sentimental. When I worked there, they gave me some 86, 85 and 86 Aubryon. So I kind of fell in love with the wines and the perfume. I think the perfume of those wines are just what makes those wines so special. Yeah. We love Syrah, by the way. So if I can mention a third one, will be Chave, you know. Chave 1990 also, like those ones you sometimes you were like so pissed. You're like, how did they do this?
Yes, absolutely.
That's the kind of reaction. I think it's a very positive one. And that's what makes us keep going. You know, we the search of the perfect wine always.
Yeah.
Sorry, I mentioned too many wines.
That's okay, Sherry. You still have definitely room for at least one of yours.
One more. I'm always partial to Beauséjour Béco. So 2010 would probably be the one that I would name if I named just one, but we've already named 3. So
I feel like you should be allowed to name at least 3.
All good. I mean, there's too many great wines out there. That's the thing.
True.
I don't. Yeah, I'm happy to drink them even if they're not made by us. I don't know that it would be something that I wish I would have made. I'm just happy to be able to be drinking some wines that are just out of this world outstanding. So
absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so finally, having not long put it to bed, can you give us a summary of how the 2021 harvest went?
Yes, so it was a year. I mean, it was great. Honestly, we're so happy because first of all, it was drama-free, so we didn't have any stress-free, drama-free, any kind of things related to fires, condition, or smoke. So that was really, really great to see. The drought was what affected the harvest to trigger, I would say, the harvest so early on. So we harvested maybe not one of the earliest. 2015 for me was still the earliest we've done, but early year. But beautiful flow of harvest. We started, early September until basically like early October, so like a month of harvest in a really beautiful pace. The weather actually in September was great in Napa. We didn't have what we call the heat waves with a lot of, 40 degrees Celsius plus days. So that we didn't have to worry about this. The vine, surprisingly, that's what was kind of scared with the drought, responding really well in general. And so the wines are, I mean, almost ready to be bottled. They drink so beautifully right now. It's like what struck me. It's, the quality, it's very impressive. So no, it's going to be a very successful year. Unfortunately, probably a lower yield, so less wine that we usually do. But at least we're excited to buy the quality. That's the important part here.
Yeah, I mean, after a 0 harvest in 2020, so typically we harvest around 70 to 75 tons, and we did about 60 this year, so a little bit lighter than normal. But as Philippe said, the quality is great. I think the only kind of issue we had this year was also things coming in at the same time, so we ended up with a little crunch on tank space and things like that. But those types of things always work themselves out, and those are fun problems to have. We say.
Absolutely.
So we're very, very happy.
Yes. So and like I was saying earlier, the weather now it's raining for the whole week, so it really feel like I was saying a normal great harvest when you finish and all the grapes are harvested, and now the rain is coming. So.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Good feeling.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you both, Sherry and Philippe, so much for taking some time to answer our questions, and I hope you guys have a lovely day.
Thank you.
And we get to have you over in the UK soon.
We hope so as well. That would be lovely. And good luck with the launch of our brand. We appreciate all the support, and obviously we will stay in touch so we can hear how things are going for you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.